typically outside of draft time, you don't get a lot of big trades and big moves in the National Football League. You just don't, for a variety of reasons, but ultimately you don't. So I have to admit, I was a little bit caught off guard today when I saw that the Buffalo Bills had not one, but two trades that they pulled off. I was legitimately surprised. A new leadership in the organization, new head coach, new front office, clearly thought change was needed and clearly thought a change in direction and vision for the organization was needed. What did they do? The Bills first traded Sammy Watkins to the Los Angeles Rams to get E.J. Gaines in a 2018 second-round pick. Then turned around a little bit later and traded starting cornerback, Ronald Darby to the Philadelphia Eagles for wide receiver Jordan Matthews and a 2018 third-round pick. It's rare to see a team pull off one kind of big deal, which is what the Sammy Watkins deal was. But then the Darby for Matthews and the third-round pick in 2018, you got two, in an NFL sense, pretty big deals happening almost back-to-back. This is an interesting thing. So what does this all mean? Looking at the Sammy Watkins trade first. You look at the old regime, traded up from 9 to 4 to go get Sammy Watkins because they just had to have him for whatever reason. And in the process, gave up a first and fourth round pick in the 2015 draft. Now, not only did they pass on Mike Evans and Odell Beckham Jr., who have proven to be better wide receivers at the NFL, they did so in a year where everybody knew the wide receiver class was historically great. And I think it has kind of panned and proven itself out to be a little bit. Now, granted, like a lot of people, I did have Sammy Watkins as the number one wide receiver on my board in that 2014 draft. I don't run from that. But with that said, the difference between Watkins and Evans and then Odell Beckham Jr. was not that great and nowhere near great enough to justify peeling up 5 spots and giving up a first and fourth round pick in the next year's draft to get this guy. Just wasn't enough difference to justify that type of deal. And not surprisingly, as is so often the case with these type of trades up, it didn't work out. So not only did you pass on guys that proved to be better players at the NFL level, you did it unnecessarily in a historically great wide receiver class, and you significantly impacted your abilities in the 2015 draft to improve your team. And to me, as much as anything else, this trade for the organization was looking to move on from past disappointment, avoiding the risk of, with them not picking up the fifth-year option of Sammy Watkins, him going out there and having a massive year in a contract year. Then you feel all the pressure for the guy that you want, this organization once traded up to get and gave up so much to get, to have to give him a big-time number one wide receiver type of contract. I wouldn't do it, and it's clear to see the Buffalo Bills didn't want to do it either. Like every time you see a flash of hope, a glimmer of hope from Sammy Watkins, then you get disappointment. He disappears for games at a time. He gets hurt, which is so often the case. What happens with him? Now you've got the Bills. They get defensive depth. They get a corner in E.J. Gaines that can play. And they get a pretty valuable pick in 2018's draft in a second rounder. So you avoid the temptation of potentially overpaying for Sammy Watkins in the off season next year. You've already kind of made it known that you didn't really see him in your long-term plan, so why not get something back for him before you allow him to go into free agency and get nothing? Honestly, and especially when you look at the second trade that happened, you were able to trade Sammy Watkins, a guy that to you as an organization was disposable, and got a contributor at cornerback and a 2018 second-round pick. This is a great deal for the Bills. For the Rams, they gamble on potentially a one-year rental, but they get an explosive, one healthy, number one type of option for Jared Goff and that Rams offense. For them, honestly, even though I wouldn't have wanted to give up a second-round pick to make this happen, I understand the logic and the philosophy of why they did. Because I will say, at this point in time, it doesn't matter if the Rams had 60 draft picks between the next 3 drafts. If Jared Goff doesn't pan out, then you've set your organization back for 5, 8, 10 potential years. You have to get Jared Goff to a point where he could validate that you took him number 1 overall and traded up so much to get him. You have to have him be that guy, become that star in Los Angeles to build that organization around. So they have to be all in at this moment to try and getting more out of Jared Goff and get more help around him right now. Now, granted, Sammy Watkins isn't going to block for him, but Sammy Watkins could provide an explosive type of Deshaun Jackson type of option in that offense, which is appropriate with Sean McVay coming over from Washington and being the Rams' new head coach. I mean, again, you could question them giving up a second-round pick in this deal in 2018 to get what is potentially a one-year rental or a guy that has a great contract year, and then you have to pay like a number 1 wide receiver and live with that disappointment down the road. But again, this is all about Jared Goff, and if Jared Goff doesn't pan out, then it doesn't matter what you do, and it doesn't matter how many picks you have in the future. You had to go all in, and you had to do it now. As far as the other deal, trading Ronald Darby for Jordan Matthews in a 2018 third-round pick, frankly, when you look at that class of 2014, ultimately, you basically have traded away Sammy Watkins, in return got Jordan Matthews, if you want to look at it that way. The Bills got a more productive wide receiver in Matthews. He's played 1 less game than Watkins over the first 3 years of their career, yet he has more receptions, more yards, and more touchdown catches. And you can't exactly say the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback situation was outstanding or otherworldly, even though it's gotten a lot better with Carson Wentz. Wentz was still a rookie last year, and Matthews is primarily a slot receiver at the NFL level. But they basically got a more productive, more consistent guy. And then on top of that, you get a valuable pick again with a 2018 third rounder. Now you look at it for the Bills. This is really an example of trying to load up on future draft pick currency and trying to really retool and rebuild on the fly. Now, heading into the 2018 draft, the Bills are going to be power players. They've got 2 first, because they've got their own, and then the first-round pick from Kansas City from that Patrick Mahomes deal. You've got 2 second-round picks, your own and the 1 from the Los Angeles Rams for trading Watkins away, and then your own and the Eagles 2018 third-round pick. So you've got 2 first, 2 seconds, and 2 third-round picks. It's clear to see what the Bills are trying to do here. The Eagles, on the other hand, they get an instant upgrade in their secondary in Ronald Darby. The third-round pick is the third-round pick, but they had to get better at defense, and frankly, Darby's probably going to be better than anybody they would have selected in the third round of the 2018 draft anyways. Jordan Matthews, you could say, well, why would you get rid of him? You were dealing from a surplus at the wide receiver position. You've got Alshon Jeffrey there, Torrey Smith there. Maybe they think they could get more out of Nelson Aguilar. I don't know that they will, but maybe they feel that way. But also, you're talking about Jordan Matthews, who is heading into, I believe, the last year of his contract. And as a result, were you going to look at him putting up big numbers in that system, in that offense, in a contract year, and potentially having to overpay to keep him? So for the Eagles, you get a guy like Darby, who's going to come in and be a starter and a contributor and a solid one for you in that secondary where you really desperately needed some help. And you're dealing from a position at the wide receiver spot where you had some depth, a little bit of a surplus. You could potentially splice off one of those guys. So it made sense. And ultimately, when you look at these 2 deals, you could see the Eagles wanted to get help in their secondary, and they did that. And they dealt from an area of surplus. So I'm good with them and what they did. The Rams wanted another weapon for Goff, and even though it involves giving up a 2018 second-round pick, like I stated a few moments ago, it's all about Goff. You could have 60 picks over the next 3 years. If Goff doesn't pan out, then your organization is screwed. You had to get some help, and Sammy Watkins, when healthy, is clearly an upgrade over anything they had at the wide receiver position. I'm sorry, Robert Woods ain't going to get the job done for you. Tavon Austin has proven he's not going to get the job done for you. Sammy Watkins could be a number 1 type of option for Jared Goff, and he needed that type of guy to go along with a rookie like a Cooper Kupp. And then the Bills, they wanted to move on from Watkins. They did that. They replaced him with a more productive player in Jordan Matthews and got some additional draft pick currency in the process. I mean, the Bills have really set themselves up well for the 2018 NFL draft. What does that mean long term? Who knows? But man, if you're a lot of teams in the NFL, you'd like to be heading into the draft weekend with that type of arsenal of picks, that type of currency built up. So while some Bills fans may be scratching their head, I haven't really looked at social media much today to see if they're bitching and moaning about this or they're praising the team. I praise the Buffalo Bills because I get the justification for what they're trying to do. I understand the rationale and the logic. And frankly, I feel like if I was in the position in this case, I would have done the exact same thing.